The cold air stung Mia's cheeks as she pressed her small hands against the frosted window of the cramped apartment. The Christmas lights twinkled from the neighboring buildings, and faint carols drifted through the hallways of the apartment complex. But inside apartment 3B, there was no warmth, no joy, only silence, broken by the sound of her mother's labored breathing from the corner of the room. "Mommy," Mia whispered softly, tiptoeing to the bedside. "Are you awake?" Her mother, Sarah, opened her eyes, but they were glazed with fever. Her once beautiful face was now pale and thin, her lips cracked, her skin burning with heat. "Baby," Sarah rasped, barely able to form words. "What time is it?" Mia glanced at the old, faded clock on the wall. The hands ticked slowly. "Almost 7, she said. "You've been sleeping all day." Sarah tried to sit up, but her frailty stopped her. She collapsed back onto the thin pillow, her body too weak to fight the fatigue. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, a tear escaping from the corner of her eye. "I should be making you dinner. I should be." Her words were cut off by a fit of violent coughing, one that left her gasping for breath. Mia rushed to the sink, grabbing the chipped mug her mother always used. She filled it with water, careful not to spill it as she brought it back to Sarah's side. Her mother's trembling hand reached out, but it was too weak to hold the cup steady. Mia helped her drink, feeling how hot her mother's skin was against her own. When the coughing subsided, Sarah looked at her daughter with desperation in her eyes. "Mia, in my purse, there's $17. It's all we have until my next paycheck," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can you go to Mrs. Rodriguez next door? Ask her to watch you for a few days?" Mia's heart sank, her small chest tightening. "Why? Where are you going?" she asked, voice trembling. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, pain flashing across her face. "I need to go to the hospital, baby," she whispered. "I'm so sick, but I don't have enough money for the treatment. The clinic said they can't help anymore. I need real medicine, the kind that costs money." She looked at Mia with a mixture of fear and love. "Mrs. Rodriguez can take care of you while I figure this out." Tears welled up in Mia's eyes. She shook her head, her tiny body shaking with fear. "No, Mommy, you can't leave me. What if you don't come back? What if?" Her words were lost in a sob. Sarah gathered the last of her strength and pulled Mia close, holding her with what little warmth she had left. "I'll come back, I promise," she said, her voice breaking. "But Mia, I need medicine. Medicine that we don't have money for." Mia's breath hitched as she hugged her mother tightly. She could feel her mother's body trembling, burning with fever. She could sense it. Her mother was slipping away, and there was nothing Mia could do to stop it. "I'm scared, Mommy," Mia whispered. "I'm scared you'll die, and it'll be my fault because I can't help you." Sarah's heart broke. "Me too, baby. Me too," she whispered back. They stayed like that for what felt like an eternity, clinging to each other in the cold apartment, as the world outside continued to celebrate Christmas. Inside, there was nothing but fear and uncertainty. Later that evening, after her mother fell into a restless sleep, Mia sat by the small kitchen table, staring at the purse that held their last bit of money. $17. That was it. The price of saving her mother's life. Mia's eyes drifted to the small shelf by her bed, where her most cherished possession sat. It was the porcelain doll her mother had given her for her 5th birthday. The doll had delicate brown curls and a soft pink dress. It was special. Mommy had saved up for 3 months to buy it. She had told Mia that the doll, named Grace, would always watch over her. But Grace was just a doll. Mommy was real, and Mommy needed help. The choice wasn't hard for Mia. She carefully picked up Grace, wrapping her in a small blanket, before putting on her thin winter coat. It wasn't enough to protect her from the harsh December cold, but it was the best she had. She checked that her mother was still asleep, then quietly slipped out of the apartment. The hallway was dim and smelled of stale cooking grease. She locked the door behind her, just as her mother had taught her, tucking the key safely in her pocket. With a deep breath, Mia descended the 3 flights of stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't supposed to go out alone, especially not at night, but this was an emergency. Mommy needed her to be brave. Outside, the snow was falling heavily, and the cold sliced through Mia's thin coat like a knife. But she kept her grip on Grace tight, walking determinedly down the street. She had a plan, sort of. There was a fancy neighborhood not far away, where rich people lived in tall buildings with doormen and expensive shops. Rich people could afford to buy a doll. Maybe one of them would pay $200 for something special. By the time she reached the neighborhood, her fingers were numb, and her breath came out in sharp, visible puffs. The lights twinkled from windows, and through the glass, she could see families gathered around dinner tables, warm and happy. It felt like a different world, one that Mia had never known. She felt a pang of envy, but quickly pushed it away. She had a job to do. She had to sell Grace and get the money for her mommy's medicine. Mia walked past several restaurants, her eyes scanning for someone who might help. She was looking for a person who seemed kind, who might understand why a little girl was trying to sell her only toy on Christmas Eve. She found him. Through the window of a nearby café, Mia saw a man sitting alone at a corner table. He was staring into his coffee cup with a sad expression, and even from the outside, Mia could tell he was the kind of man who could afford anything. But he looked so lonely. He looked like someone who might understand what she was going through. With a deep breath, Mia pushed open the door to the café. The warmth of the room hit her instantly, followed by the smell of coffee and pastries. The barista at the counter noticed her right away. "Hey, little girl, are you lost?" he asked, concern in his voice. "Where are your parents?" But Mia ignored him, walking straight toward the man at the corner table. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought he might hear it. She stopped in front of him, holding Grace up. "Excuse me, sir," she said in a small voice. "Would you like to buy my doll? She's very special. She's a real porcelain doll, with real hair. Her dress was handmade. She cost a lot of money when she was new." The man looked up slowly. His eyes were dark and intense, and for a moment, Mia felt like he was staring right into her soul. His features were handsome, though tired, and his gaze was full of sadness, like he carried a burden no one could see. He didn't answer right away, and Mia worried she'd made a mistake. But then he spoke, his voice low and gentle. "Why are you selling your doll?" Mia took a deep breath, the words tumbling out in a rush. "My mommy is very sick," she said. "She has pneumonia, and the doctors said she needs medicine, but it costs $200. We only have $17. I am selling Grace so I can get the money to buy the medicine." Her voice cracked on the last word, and tears welled up in her eyes. She hated sounding like she might cry, but she couldn't help it. She was terrified. The man's expression shifted. First, shock, then concern, then something else Mia couldn't name. Something almost painful. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. Mia shifted nervously. Mommy had told her not to tell strangers her name, but this felt different. This felt important. "Mia," she said. "Mia Carter. What's your name?" He paused for a long time, and Mia could see that something was happening in his mind. "James," he said finally. "James Harrington." Mia frowned. "That's a nice name," she said politely, like her mommy had taught her. "So, will you buy Grace? Please? My mommy is getting sicker, and I'm scared she's going to die, and it will be my fault because I can't help her." Her voice broke again, and this time, the tears she'd been holding back fell. The man's face softened, and without another word, he stood up, kneeling beside her. "It's okay, Mia," he said softly. "You're a very brave girl. You're doing an incredible thing for your mommy." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. Gently, he wiped her tears. "Tell me where your mommy is. Is she alone?" Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share where you're watching from. Let us know what you think about Mia's courage and her journey. Stay tuned because this story is just getting started. Mia stared at James as he gently wiped away her tears, his movements calm but filled with urgency. For a moment, she was too shocked to speak. This man, who had just bought her precious doll, was acting like he cared more than anyone else in her life right now. He didn't look like someone who would buy a doll from a little girl on Christmas Eve. He looked like someone who had everything: money, power, confidence. He was dressed in a suit, his hair neatly styled, but his eyes, dark and troubled, made Mia feel like maybe, just maybe, he understood what it felt like to be scared and alone. But he wasn't supposed to care. He wasn't supposed to be a part of her world. "Where is your mommy, Mia?" James asked, his voice softer now. "Is she at home? Alone?" Mia hesitated, feeling that familiar weight of fear settling in her chest. "She's in our apartment, by herself. She's sick. She sleeps all the time now. She doesn't get up anymore." The words hurt, but they needed to be said. Mia had spent so many nights lying awake, listening to her mother's sick, labored breathing. She had heard the way Sarah tried to hide her coughs, but Mia knew the truth. Her mother wasn't going to get better. James stood up, his brow furrowed with concern. I'm going to help you, Mia. I'm going to take you to her. Mia's heart raced. She had been hoping for someone, anyone, to step in, but this was more than she had dared to dream. She had expected to walk away from the cafe empty-handed, her precious doll sold to the highest bidder for a few dollars. But this man, this stranger, was offering to help. Really? She whispered, unsure if she could trust the words he spoke. He smiled down at her, his eyes softening. Yes, really. Let's go get your mommy. Mia couldn't stop the rush of hope that flooded her chest. But a small voice in the back of her mind whispered the same question she had been asking herself all night. Why is he helping us? She had seen people with money before. Rich people who didn't even look at the poor, who turned their heads when they saw a family struggling. But James wasn't like that. There was something about him that made her want to trust him, even though everything inside her told her to be cautious. Are you sure? Mommy says not to trust strangers, Mia asked, the words coming out in a rush. James knelt down in front of her again, his eyes full of understanding. I understand, Mia, and your mommy is right to tell you to be careful, but I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a phone. I'm going to call my driver. We're going to get a car and go straight to your apartment. You'll see. We'll be there before you know it. Mia nodded, still unsure, but the trust was beginning to build. If there was one thing she had learned in her 6 years of life, it was that people who wanted to help didn't always look like what she expected. Maybe James wasn't a typical rich man. But who was he really? She had never heard of a James Harrington. She knew about rich people. She'd seen them in the neighborhood, with their fancy cars and clothes. But James seemed different. The way he cared, the way he spoke to her, made her wonder if he was more than just a stranger. The cafe felt warmer now, the sounds of chatter and the clinking of cups fading as James stood up and made his call. His tone was no longer sad or distant. It was firm and kind. Marcus, I need you to bring the car around. We have an emergency. I'm taking Mia and her mother to the hospital. Mia looked up at him, still clutching her doll tightly in her arms. You're really going to help her? You're really going to help Mommy? James's expression softened. Yes, Mia. I'll make sure your mommy gets the best help. And you? He smiled at her warmly. You're a very brave girl. We'll get you both the help you need. The sincerity in his voice made Mia feel like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. They stepped outside, and the cold air hit Mia like a slap. She pulled her thin coat tighter around her body as they walked toward the sleek black car waiting by the curb. The snow was falling harder now, but James didn't seem bothered by it. He moved with purpose, his gaze fixed ahead. Mia hesitated, glancing back at the cafe. The warmth inside seemed so far away now, but she didn't look back long. James had made her feel safe, something she hadn't felt in days. As the car door opened, Mia slipped inside, Grace still clutched tightly in her arms. James slid in next to her, giving her a reassuring smile before speaking into the phone once more. Get the best doctors ready. Sarah Carter needs help, and we're not wasting any time. Mia sat quietly, her eyes wide as the car began to drive through the snow-covered streets. The city she had always known now felt like another world. They were heading towards something that felt different, something that could change everything. But as much as Mia wanted to believe that everything would be okay, her heart was still heavy. Her mother needed medicine. They needed money. They needed more than just a kind man offering help. And Mia couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, this man wasn't just a stranger. Maybe he was someone important. Someone who could change everything for her and her mother. As they neared their destination, Mia felt her hope growing. But in the back of her mind, the question still lingered. Who was James Harrington, really? The car sped through the snow-covered streets of the city, the headlights cutting through the dark like beams of hope. Mia sat quietly beside James, still clutching Grace tightly. Her small hands were frozen, but she didn't mind. She felt warm inside for the first time in what seemed like forever, though she couldn't quite figure out why. James had promised to help, and Mia was beginning to believe him. He wasn't like the other rich people she'd seen before. He didn't look down on her, didn't dismiss her. He spoke to her like she mattered, like she was more than just a little girl with a dying mother. Mia couldn't help but wonder about him. Who was James Harrington? He didn't look like a regular businessman. He looked like someone with a story, someone who had been through something difficult, just like her and her mother. The car made its way through the streets, and Mia turned to look at him. His expression was focused, But there was something in his eyes that told her he wasn't just thinking about the hospital or the money for her mother's medicine. He seemed lost in thought, as if something was weighing heavily on him. For a moment, she almost felt like she should ask him, "What happened to you? Why are you so sad?" But before she could speak, James turned to her, his gaze softening when he saw the worry in her eyes. "Are you okay, Mia?" he asked gently. Mia nodded quickly, but the question lingered in her mind. Why was he helping us? James seemed to read the question in her eyes, because his next words took her by surprise. "I know this must be confusing for you, Mia. I know it's a lot to take in, but I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you and your mom." Mia felt a lump form in her throat. He was here for them. That was something she'd never experienced before. In all her 6 years, she had never had anyone say those words and mean them. Not even her own father, who she didn't remember at all. She looked at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Do you know my mommy?" she asked quietly. James hesitated, a flicker of something crossing his face. For a split second, Mia thought he might avoid the question, but instead, he looked at her with a sad smile. "Yes," he said, his voice soft. "I met your mother a long time ago. A long, long time ago." Mia frowned, trying to understand. "But I don't remember you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. James's expression softened. "You wouldn't. It's been a long time, Mia. I never knew you existed until a few days ago." "A few days ago?" Mia's mind raced. Why didn't he know about me? She felt a little confused, but also a strange kind of excitement. She had a father. She had always wanted one. "Did you know about me before?" she asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the question. James took a deep breath, looking out the window for a moment before speaking. "I didn't, Mia, but now I do. And I'm going to make sure you and your mother get everything you need." Mia's heart raced. This man, this stranger, was telling her he was going to help her. But something in her still felt unsure. Was this real? Was he really going to help? The car slowed as they reached their destination, an old apartment building in the heart of Brooklyn. Mia's stomach tightened. "This is where we live," she thought, her gaze drifting to the rundown building. She had always been so ashamed of it, but now, seeing it through James's eyes, it felt different. The car came to a stop, and James turned to her, his face serious now. "We're going inside, Mia," he said, his tone full of determination. "Your mom needs help, and we're going to get her the best care." Mia felt a wave of relief wash over her. She could feel the warmth of hope building inside her. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't alone in this fight. Someone was with her. Someone was going to help. But as they stepped out of the car and made their way toward the entrance, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to James's story. Why had he come back now, after all these years? And why had he never tried to find her mother before? Before she could ask another question, James was already at the door, knocking gently. "Mia, do you have the key?" he asked. Mia nodded, reaching into her pocket and pulling out the old key she always kept close. It was the key to their home, the key that had kept them safe for so long. She slid it into the lock and turned. Inside, the apartment was cold, darker than usual. The faint sound of Sarah's breathing could be heard from the bedroom, and Mia's heart tightened in her chest. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready to face her mother's illness, even if James was here to help. "Mommy," Mia called out softly, stepping into the small, cluttered living room. The only light came from the faint glow of the streetlights outside, casting long shadows across the room. Sarah stirred in the bed, her eyes fluttering open as she saw the two of them standing there. Her voice was weak as she whispered, "Mia, you're home." "Who's this?" Mia's heart raced. She looked at James, who was standing behind her, his face soft with concern. "This is Mr. Harrington," Mia said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's going to help us, Mommy." Sarah blinked, clearly confused, but a flicker of hope appeared in her tired eyes. "Help us?" she repeated, her voice barely audible. "How?" James stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I'm going to get you the best medical care, Sarah," he said. "We're not wasting any time. We're going to get you the medicine you need, and we're going to make sure you're okay." For a moment, there was silence in the room, and then Sarah slowly reached out her hand, her fingers trembling. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," James replied gently. "We're just going to help." Mia stood silently, watching the exchange between her mother and this stranger who had somehow become her lifeline. In that moment, something shifted inside her. She had never felt so certain about anything in her life. She had a father, and for the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Are you hooked yet? The story is just beginning, and Mia's journey is far from over. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share where you're watching from. Mia sat on the couch, her eyes flickering between her mother, who was lying weakly in the bed, and James, who had just finished making a call to a hospital, his voice calm yet urgent. He was arranging everything for them, and Mia couldn't help but feel a strange comfort in his presence. It was as if he was already part of their world, even though she barely knew him. The way he spoke, the way he seemed to already care, it felt different than anything she had experienced before. "Mommy's going to get better now," Mia said softly, her voice full of hope as she clutched Grace tightly against her chest. Sarah smiled faintly, her eyes filled with both exhaustion and gratitude. "You think so, baby?" she whispered. "You think she's going to be okay?" Mia nodded with all the certainty a 6-year-old could muster. "He's going to make sure you get the best doctors, Mommy. He's going to help us." James hung up the phone and turned to them, his face calm but filled with determination. "I've arranged for a car to take us to the hospital. They'll be ready for you when we get there," he said, his voice steady. He paused for a moment, his eyes landing on Sarah. "You're in good hands now, Sarah. I promise." Sarah's breath hitched as she looked at him, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. "But I don't understand. Why are you helping us? Why now?" The question hung in the air between them, and Mia noticed the slight tension in James's posture. He looked at Sarah, his expression softening. "It's complicated," he began, his voice quieter than before. I didn't know about you or Mia until recently. But now that I do, I'm not going to stand by and watch you suffer." Mia didn't understand the full weight of his words, but she could tell something had shifted in the room. She was beginning to see that maybe James wasn't just a stranger. He was someone who cared. But the question still lingered in her mind. Why had he waited so long? Why hadn't he been there before? As if reading her thoughts, James continued, "I know this might be hard to believe, Mia, and it's hard for me too. But the truth is, I never knew your mother was pregnant with you. I had no idea I had a daughter. If I had, I would have been there." Mia's heart skipped a beat. "A daughter? Me?" Her voice trembled as she asked, "You're my daddy?" James's gaze softened, and for a moment, he seemed lost in thought. I don't know yet, Mia," he said, his voice laced with uncertainty. "But I want to be. I want to be part of your life. I want to make up for lost time." The words hit Mia like a wave. She had always wondered about her father, about the man her mother sometimes spoke of in whispers, but she had never imagined he might be someone like James. He was rich, powerful, a stranger who was now offering to take care of them. But could he really be her father? Before she could ask more, Sarah interrupted, her voice weak but filled with emotion. "James, we need to talk. You've been so kind to us, and I don't know how to thank you. But I need to understand. Why didn't you try to find me after that night?" The question was raw, honest, and painful, and it seemed to catch James off guard. He took a step towards Sarah, his expression full of regret. "I never stopped thinking about you, Sarah. But after that night, I had to leave. I went abroad for work, and I never knew you were pregnant. I left a number for you, but I never heard from you." Sarah looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "I tried," she whispered. "I called the number, but it was disconnected. I searched for you for years, but it felt hopeless. I couldn't reach you." The pain in Sarah's voice was unmistakable, and it hit James harder than he expected. He stepped closer, kneeling beside her. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I never knew. If I had, I would have tried harder. I would have been there." Mia watched them, unsure of what to say. She didn't know what all the words meant, disconnected numbers, searching for someone. But she did know this. James seemed to really care about her mother. And maybe, just maybe, he could be the father she had always dreamed of having. "I'm going to make things right," James said, his voice steady now. "I'll do whatever it takes to help you, Sarah. I'll be here for you and Mia, and I won't let you go through this alone." Sarah looked up at him, her eyes filled with both doubt and hope. "I don't know if I can believe that," she whispered, her voice filled with vulnerability. "I've been alone for so long. I don't know how to let someone in." James reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You don't have to let me in all at once. I'm not asking for anything, Sarah. I just want to help." Mia felt a wave of relief wash over her. It wasn't a full answer, but it was a start. And in this moment, a small part of her heart believed that maybe this man, this stranger who had stepped into their lives so suddenly, was going to keep his promise. As the night stretched on, Mia felt a strange sense of calm that she hadn't felt in days. Maybe things were going to be okay. Maybe this Christmas, they wouldn't be alone. As James and Sarah prepared to leave for the hospital, Mia couldn't help but wonder about the future. What did it mean to have a father? What did it mean for her mother to trust James? But as the car pulled away from the apartment building and the city lights blurred behind them, Mia decided that maybe some questions didn't need to be answered right away. For now, all that mattered was that they were going to get help. And for the first time in a long while, Mia allowed herself to believe in something bigger than the fear that had held her captive for so long. What will happen when Mia and Sarah face their past and future together? Don't miss the next. Make sure to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share where you're watching from. Your support means the world to us. The car ride to the hospital was a blur for Mia. The city lights flashed by in streaks of yellow and white, the steady hum of the car's engine the only sound. She sat between Sarah and James, her heart racing with a mix of hope and confusion. It was hard to wrap her mind around everything that had happened in the past few hours. One minute, she had been in the cold apartment, desperate to save her mother, and the next, a stranger was promising to help them both. James was sitting close to her, his gaze focused on the road ahead, but every now and then, his eyes would flicker to her, his expression soft. He had promised to help, and Mia wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that he could be the father she'd always wanted. But something inside her couldn't let go of the questions that still swirled in her mind. "Why didn't you know about me, Mr. Harrington?" Mia asked, her small voice cutting through the silence in the car. James glanced at her, his face softening. "I know it's confusing, Mia," he said gently. "I didn't know about you because your mother never told me. She tried, but things got complicated. I had no idea she had a child. I never knew about you until recently." Mia thought about his words, her brow furrowing. "But why didn't she tell you? Why didn't she tell you about me when I was born?" Sarah, who had been silent up until now, let out a deep sigh, her hand resting weakly on Mia's shoulder. "It wasn't that simple, sweetheart," she said softly. "I didn't know how to find him. I tried, but life was too hard. I didn't have the means or the strength to go looking for him." Mia looked up at her mother, confusion clouding her small face. "But you didn't tell him about me? I thought maybe he didn't want to know. Maybe he didn't want to be my daddy." Sarah's eyes filled with sadness as she looked at James, who had remained silent during their exchange. "I didn't want to burden him with something he didn't want, Mia," she whispered. "I thought it was better to let him go and raise you on my own." James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly affected by Sarah's words. He reached over and gently squeezed her hand. "Sarah, I can't undo the past, but I'm here now," he said quietly. "And I'm not going anywhere. Mia deserves to know who I am, and I'm going to do everything I can to make up for lost time." Sarah glanced at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of doubt and hope. "I'm not sure I can believe that, James," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been alone for so long. I don't know how to trust anyone anymore." James's voice softened. "I understand, but I'm not asking you to trust me all at once. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I'm here for you both." Mia's heart fluttered. She didn't understand all of it. She didn't know the full story of why her mother and James had been separated all these years. But what she did know was this: James seemed different. He wasn't like the other men who had come in and out of her life. He was here now, and for the first time in a long time, Mia allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could be the father she had always dreamed of. As the car pulled up to the hospital, the tension in the air thickened. Mia could feel the fear creeping back into her chest. Her mother was still so sick, and even though James had promised to help, Mia knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. They stepped out of the car, and James held the door open for them. Sarah was pale and exhausted, her steps slow as she moved toward the entrance. Mia stayed close by her side, clutching Grace to her chest, trying to feel the comfort the doll had always brought her. Inside, the hospital smelled sterile, unfamiliar. The lights were too bright, the noise of nurses and doctors moving around them overwhelming. But James's presence beside her made the room feel a little less cold, a little less intimidating. "I've arranged for the best doctors to take care of you, Sarah," James said, his voice steady as he guided them toward the front desk. "We're going to get you the help you need." Sarah gave him a weak smile. Thank you, she whispered, her voice hoarse from the illness that had taken over her body. I don't know how to thank you for everything. James looked at her, his expression softening. You don't need to thank me, he replied. I'm just doing what's right. You and Mia are my responsibility now. Mia glanced up at him, her heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. What did he mean by that? Responsibility? What did that look like? And why hadn't he been there for her all these years? But before she could ask another question, a nurse approached, her face friendly but professional. Mr. Harrington, we've got a room ready for Ms. Carter. Please follow me. James nodded, his hand gently resting on Mia's back as they followed the nurse down the sterile hallways of the hospital. Mia felt her stomach twist with anxiety. She was scared for her mother, scared of the unknown. She didn't know what was coming next, but she knew one thing for sure. They weren't alone anymore. As they entered the room where Sarah was going to be treated, James helped her into the bed, adjusting the pillows carefully to make her as comfortable as possible. Mia sat quietly beside her mother, watching as the nurses and doctors prepared the floor and set up equipment. James stepped back, his gaze lingering on Sarah. I'll be right here, he said softly. I won't leave you. Sarah looked up at him, a small tear escaping from her eye. I'm not used to this, she whispered. I've been doing everything on my own for so long. It's hard to accept help. James's voice was gentle but firm. You don't have to do it alone anymore, Sarah. You've got me. You've got both of us now. Mia watched them, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. For the first time, she felt a sense of peace. Maybe everything wasn't perfect, but at least they had each other. As the night wore on, the hospital room became a quiet haven, a place where Mia could finally rest, knowing that her mother was being cared for. James stayed close, a silent but reassuring presence at the foot of the bed. Mia closed her eyes, trying to fall asleep. The sounds of the hospital, the beeping machines, and the hushed conversations outside the room became background noise. She was exhausted, but there was something else keeping her awake, something that felt like hope, wrapped in the promise of a future she hadn't dared to imagine. What do you think of James's promise to help? Is he the father Mia's always dreamed of? Stay tuned for the next chapter, where more secrets are revealed and the stakes get even higher. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share where you're watching from. Your support means everything to us. The days at the hospital passed in a blur of doctors, nurses, and quiet conversations. Sarah's condition had stabilized thanks to the treatment James had arranged, but she was still weak, unable to fully regain her strength. The doctors were hopeful, but the road to recovery would be long. Mia stayed by her mother's side, never straying far. She was beginning to adjust to this new reality, the reality where James, a man she barely knew, was part of their lives now. Every time he entered the hospital room, his presence brought a quiet reassurance, but Mia still wondered about the truth of it all. Could he really be her father? James had been patient with her, never pushing her to call him anything more than Mr. Harrington. But there were moments when she caught glimpses of something more, something that made her feel like maybe he wasn't just a stranger. He wanted to be part of their lives. He wanted to make up for lost time. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the city, James sat beside Sarah's bed, his hand gently holding hers. Mia sat at the edge of the room, watching them both. There was a tenderness between them now, something that hadn't been there when they first met. It was the beginning of something. She wasn't sure what, but it was something good. How are you feeling today, Sarah? James asked softly, brushing a lock of hair away from Sarah's forehead. Sarah smiled weakly. Better, thanks to you. I still feel weak, but I don't feel like I'm dying anymore. Mia looked at them both, her heart swelling. For the first time, she truly believed James was here for them. He wasn't just some man passing through their lives. He was sticking around. I think I'm starting to believe you, James, Sarah said, her voice trembling. I think I'm starting to believe you really want to help us. James gave her a soft smile. I do, Sarah. I'm not going anywhere. The words hit Mia like a wave. He's staying, she thought, and a small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at her lips. She had never thought she'd have a father, but now, in this moment, with James sitting beside her mother, she could almost see it. She could almost imagine a future with both of them. A future where her mother wasn't sick anymore, where they weren't alone in this small, cold apartment. A future where James wasn't just a man who had helped them financially. He was becoming part of their family. As the night wore on, Mia climbed into the bed beside her mother, curling up against her warmth. James sat at the foot of the bed, quietly reading a book. The room was peaceful, the sounds of the city outside muffled by the thick hospital walls. "Mr. Harrington?" Mia asked hesitantly, breaking the silence. James looked up from his book, a soft smile on his face. "Yes, Mia. Do you really want to be my daddy?" Mia's voice was small, but it carried the weight of her heart's question. James put the book down and moved to her side, kneeling next to the bed. His expression softened, and for a moment, Mia saw something more in him than just the man who had come to help. He looked like someone who had truly found a piece of his past he hadn't even known was missing. "I do, Mia," he said gently. "I want to be your father. I don't know how to make up for all the years I wasn't here, but I'm going to do my best to be the father you deserve." Mia's eyes welled up with tears, but this time, they were tears of relief, not fear. For the first time, she wasn't worried about the future. She wasn't scared of being alone anymore. James wasn't going anywhere. He was staying. And that, in itself, was a miracle. "Will you come visit us at home, Mr. Harrington?" Mia asked, her voice trembling with hope. James smiled warmly. "I'd love to, Mia. And you can call me James or Dad, if you'd like." The words hung in the air, soft and sincere, as Mia looked up at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She nodded slowly, unsure of the weight of what that word, Dad, really meant. But in that moment, she felt like maybe, as the days passed, Sarah's strength slowly returned, and the bond between her and James deepened. They spoke openly about their past, the pain of lost time, and the obstacles they had each faced. James apologized for not being there, and Sarah confessed her own fears and doubts about trusting anyone again. Their healing, both physical and emotional, mirrored each other's, and the trust that had once been lost began to find its way back. But the biggest change came in Mia. The little girl who had once feared abandonment now felt secure, loved, and cherished. James wasn't just a man helping them out of obligation. He was her father, in every sense of the word. And with that realization came a sense of peace, a sense of home that Mia had never known. The apartment felt different now, warmer, somehow, despite the harsh winter that still held the city in its grip. The walls that had once seemed so cold and empty now felt full of life, full of promise. It was as if everything had changed, and yet it was still the same place. The only difference was the people who now called it home. James stood in the doorway, watching as Sarah prepared dinner. Mia was at the table, coloring in her sketchpad, a soft smile playing on her lips. For the first time, the silence in the room was not filled with worry or fear. It was filled with comfort and peace. "I can't believe this is real," Sarah said, her voice soft as she glanced over at James. "After everything we've been through, it feels like a dream." James walked over to her, gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "I know," he said, his voice steady, "but it's real. We're here now, and we're going to make sure this is just the beginning." Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "I've spent so long carrying this weight on my own. I didn't know how to let someone else help me. But now, with you and Mia, I don't feel so alone anymore." James smiled, his hand resting gently on hers. "You're not alone anymore, Sarah. You'll never be alone again." Mia looked up from her drawing, her eyes bright. "Are we a real family now?" she asked innocently, her voice filled with hope. James crouched down beside her, his heart swelling with emotion. "Yes, Mia, we are a real family. A family that's been through a lot, but we've come out stronger." Mia grinned, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of excitement and relief. "So, I can call you Dad now?" she asked, a hint of hesitation in her voice. James's heart swelled at the words. He had waited so long to hear them, and now they were here, spoken from the lips of the little girl who had once been a stranger to him. "You can, Mia," he said softly, his voice filled with love. "You can call me Dad, and I'll always be here for you, no matter what." Sarah watched them, her heart full. She had feared for so long that she had ruined their chances at a happy family, that the broken pieces of her past would never fit together. But now, she saw that it was possible. It was possible to rebuild, to heal, and to move forward. As the evening passed, they ate dinner together, laughter filling the space between them. James told stories of his childhood, and Mia shared her dreams for the future. They were no longer just a mother and daughter trying to survive. They were a family, sharing in the simple joy of being together. Later, as they sat on the couch, the quiet of the night settling around them. James spoke softly. I know it won't always be easy. We still have a lot of healing to do. But we're doing it together now. And that's what matters. Mia looked up at him, her eyes filled with a quiet wisdom beyond her years. I think we're going to be okay, she said, her voice full of confidence. Sarah smiled, her heart full of hope. Yes, she whispered. We're going to be okay. As the story comes to an end, we've seen how Sarah, James, and Mia have all faced their past, learned to trust again, and embraced the power of love and family. This journey wasn't just about healing physical wounds. It was about healing emotional scars and learning that it's never too late for a second chance. For anyone who has ever felt lost, alone, or disconnected from the people they love, remember this. It's never too late to rebuild. It's never too late to start again, to give love a chance, and to trust that things can get better, no matter how dark the past may seem. Life has a way of throwing us curveballs, of challenging us in ways we never expect. But the strength to persevere, to rise above, and to find hope in the darkest of times is within all of us. Don't give up. Even when the road feels too long or the obstacles too high, there is always a way forward. And just like Sarah, James, and Mia found their way back to each other, you too can find your way to healing, to growth, and to love. Forgiveness, whether it's forgiving others or forgiving yourself, letting go of the past is the first step toward healing. It's never too late to rebuild relationships or to start anew. The future is full of possibilities. Family. Family is not just about blood. It's about love, support, and the willingness to be there for each other when it matters most. No matter how hard things get, never lose hope. Keep pushing forward because brighter days are ahead. Thank you for following Mia's journey and witnessing her family's transformation. If this story inspired you, please subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and share where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts about the story and what lessons you've learned along the way. Your support helps the channel grow, and we're so grateful for it. Remember, never give up and always keep moving forward.